Hello everybody again for YouTube Tuesday. Today I'm going to show you how to transfer images onto a little wooden disc using graphite paper, which is a wonderful tool that I don't think many people know about. It's along the same lines of technique as tracing paper, but without all the steps, and it's going to go a lot faster. So I had an amazing craft fair this weekend. I sold out of so much stuff I had to make stuff overnight to restock, or it's a psychology thing where you have to have enough to sell, even though people only might buy 3 of them, you need 5, and it's a psychology thing with retail stuff. That's my excuse anyway. So I'm going to be in a craft fair in November for Christmas stuff, but this particular experiment is not necessarily Christmas themed. So you can see this creepy tree drawing I did. I think it was last year. And I did this drawing to do an experimental dry point. Here is the actual dry point I made. I pulled it by hand using oil paint, and I did this little cool foiling up here of the moon. I may or may not do that with the wooden disc I have, but that's the dry point that was finished. There's some watercolor back here and then oil paint for that process. But this time, we're going to do it on this little wooden disc, guys. Now, I've got 3 different kinds here. 3 different, opaqueness in the middle, lightness. It's all the same wood, and I'm only going to do the lightest one today, and I'm going to tell you why. When I do the ink drawing on this, it's going to catch on some of the burrs here. This needs to be sanded more. I want a really light background for the drawing I'm doing. I might do more of an acetone transfer with this, and I think that would work really well and be really fun with grain. This one, I watered down some acrylic white paint. I want just a paler version on the inside. I also like that a lot, and it still has a lot of the grain. Here you can see some knots took up more of the acrylic paint than you might have wanted it to. This also has the same thing. It's just lighter, and it's still a little bit wet. So that could be why the color is still so much different when it probably wouldn't be otherwise, because there isn't that much paint right there. I wanted something really, really light to do this process with. So I painted almost straight acrylic white paint on this. You can still see some of the really cool ridges and everything. And to get it to dry in time, I popped it in my oven, which made some of the sap pop out because this is a pine disc. Kind of cracked. So this is my experimental one. I wouldn't sell this as a product. Maybe. It's got character. I think the pen I've got is going to be a little better going over these bumps when it's filled in with some paint. So let's get to the business. So this is the graphite paper. It's basically black. It's paper, very thin, basically tracing paper, covered with a very thin layer of graphite. And you can use this over and over and over again until it's all filled up. This is the graphite layer. It's kind of slippery. You have to be careful of that. It will come off on your fingers. That's the graphite. So what you're supposed to be able to do, and you can do in fact, put graphite layer down. You can get this stuff at virtually any hobby craft store around. Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Amazon. I don't know about Joann. This is not sponsored. This is just my craft stash I'm using up. I'm going to chop it so it's a bit more manageable. And make sure it covers my entire little wooden disc, just like that. So that's graphite side down. Trying to see where the shape of my disc is. And then I'm going to put my drawing on top. So we've got a good sandwich. Graphite side down, drawing on top. And kind of blind seeing where the edges are to this thing. So we're just going to feel around and make sure we got it on there. And then we're going to try to tape this little guy so our layers don't budge around too much when we're drawing. That will help. If the pages jump, it won't be lined up the way you want it. Not a horrible end of the world, but just a pain that you don't want to fix later. So that's going to be okay if I keep my hand on it a little bit. Now, the trick when you're transferring this stuff, you need something that's going to apply a decent amount of pressure without tearing through all the layers. So I'm actually going to use my ballpoint pen. That might help me see where I've been, and I'm not going to be exact either when I go over these lines. And when we lift all the layers up, you should see a nice little line underneath the graphite paper. So you're going to see my hands cover most of this drawing right here. I don't have to be exact with my little design. If anything, it's the composition. I know where all this stuff is. And I'm going to be going over my little tree with some India ink. I just want the basic hard work done of my lines and composition. And if I make more than one, people get a very similar composition to all of them. I'll put together my creepy little tree. Excuse me. You can find the edge of my disc right there. 'Tis the season for hairballs. Not that I'm a cat or anything. Cut down the trunk. I might see if these lines show up. But again, I'll be doing that with India ink after we reveal the design here. Probably just black India ink at this point. Although I do have some other colors with me as well. Starting on a medium tone background like gray would be really nice when you put white highlights on top of it with acrylic India ink, acrylic paint, whiteout, things like that. This little bit here was just dirt that was in my sketchbook, so that's not part of the design. You don't have to be exact about whatever designs you're drawing on these. They each have their own character. You can just do a transfer, like gluing on a transfer if you want them all to be perfectly aligned. Or else you are kind of wasting your time and you've got better things to do. Give them some character. Is that all the lines? Close enough for what I want to do? And I'm going to carefully trace this little circle. I think that would be really nice to give that some foiling at the end, especially if I do more than one color back here. Now, even with the India ink, I could go over it again with a nice light acrylic wash, like the first dry point I showed you with the colors in the background. That might look really cool. If I'd used a special medium, I could probably do watercolor on this little block as well. I have some of Daniel Smith's watercolor ground, and you need lots of layers of it, like gesso. It basically is a gesso for watercolor, basically. It's little fibers. But you have to put on more than one layer, definitely, and they want you to have it sit for at least a day. It's hard for my experimenting and short-term attention span. All right. I've got enough lines on there that I want as guidelines. So I'm going to carefully take my tape away, because I'd like to use that graphite paper again. There's definitely enough juice left in that piece of paper to use it again, but it's still kind of fragile. Let's see if those lines stuck, shall we? Moment of truth. Oh yeah! They're not really strong, dark, deep lines, and that's partially because you have a lot of texture on that block as well. If you had a perfectly smooth piece of paper, you'd probably see a lot more. You notice also that this graphite paper has been used quite a bit, so it might be losing a little bit of its juice. Alrighty, so you can see a lot of those lines that stuck, and we're going to have a nice creepy little tree ornament. Yay! Yay, October! Alright, so this is my favorite India ink, P.H. Martin's Bombay Black. It's worth it, and it also comes in tons and tons of colors, which probably isn't strictly India ink at this point. And to raise the stakes tonight, we're using a dip pen. This will be very interesting because when these springy little metal bits hit textures in the wood, it could go flying into a splat and ruin the whole thing. That's half the fun. But I love the feedback you get from this little thing with thinner and thick lines and just the visceral feel of, it's less mechanical, it's more organic. You can feel it, there's feedback. I have tried glass dip pens. They're gorgeous things, and you can make them so ornate and so fancy, but you can't get feedback with them. Where's my tiny little one? Here's my tiny little purple dip glass pen. So the capillary action in the glass sucks up more ink, and supposedly you can get a more stable line through all this because it's not flexible. And while they have beautiful, beautiful designs in the handles and the nib part and everything, I discovered I like that flexibility, which makes a glass dip pen pointless for me. Haha, pointless. Don't break them. They're sharp. So I like these little metal guys instead. And I've got lots of different versions of them. You can even jam them in a quill. This one can hold little metal nibs too. There's lots of shapes of metal nibs. You see the big flat ones for calligraphy these days, which would also be fun to do calligraphy on one of these little guys. But the rest of the time, I'm just going to be inking this little thing until we have a tree and a moon sun thing because it's October, which is the last thing I do. You might get a lot of scratchy bits. And this is half the fun of using your intuition for all these little scritchy lines that you want going on in this thing. Now, nib pens can also give you more of an organic texture, which helps our creepy little tree be creepier, if you're going for that thing. There's a more capillary action that pulls ink in here, and of course you can see it doesn't last very long. I tend to put it on the top, so I know how much I've got left, and I'm not blobbing all over underneath, and it's not going to kind of fling underneath there. Maybe you can hear the scritchy sounds from all that. I hate the scratching sounds of these pens. Hate it. In fact, if anyone else was actually making the scratching sound with a pen, I may have to leave the room. But as it is, this one's doing fine. So I'm currently prepping for the November Art Hop in Kalamazoo. We're doing a scavenger hunt, where passport event, where you get your passport signed and stamped by artists throughout the Park Trade Center. There's a couple of us in the Alliance of Kalamazoo Artists participating. They're letting me have a little tiny cranny to hide in for you to find me. So you can get a stamp from me, and yes, there'll be drawings for free artwork. Great for free. Hey, might as well fill it out and get a free gift. If you don't like it, you can give it to somebody else for Christmas. So come and find us and go ahead and go seek with us in the Park Trade Center on November 2nd, starting at 5. After that, I've got a Holiday Expo Center thing right before Thanksgiving, so you can beat all the Christmas crowds. And I want to have a lot of these nature-themed Christmas presents. I love Michigan nature-themed stuff, or nature-themed stuff, or science-themed stuff. I'll probably have as many puns as I possibly can hold as well. I'm not going to tell you what those puns are or all the products because that's half the fun. And I don't know what half of them are yet. Anyway, I have a lot of experimenting to do. Practically sold out of most of my 5x7 paintings this past weekend, so I'll be making a lot more of those for gift ideas. They're great for those tiny little sections, like above light switches. They mail well because they're tiny. So do the totes. They don't break. If you can have any amazing thing you have not seen at a craft or art fair, like for Christmas, and you don't know how to make it, or you just want me to stock something so you don't have to, please let me know. I want to see what I can make. This is my first big holiday craft fair, so I'm excited for how that works. I caved and bought electricity for my booth, and you can find out why when you meet me there. Scritch, scritch, scritch. This is actually going over very well on top of this wood grain, better than I thought, and I am grateful for that. So I'm just gonna highlight this little moon thing right now. I do not have time to foil it while we're live. Oh, look at that beautiful round line right there. Well, when I do foil it, you will see that pop up a little bit more. Now, for all of you who have bought lots and lots of colored pencils for lots and lots of adult coloring books or kid coloring books, or who cares what kind of coloring books, if you have filled up all of those coloring books and you have no idea what to do with the rest of those colored pencils or markers, did you know that colored pencil works really nicely on raw wood? It does kind of eat up in the raw wood because there's a lot of heavy texture in there and it's going to eat up your pencil a little bit. But the velvety texture of the wood makes it beautiful. So if you get one of these lightly colored wood discs like this, or something even lighter like birch or something really pale, play with your colored pencils. This is something else you can do for your ornaments. Use your graphite paper to transfer an image, whether it's in your own sketchbook or it's in a coloring page, Christmas themed. You can trace Christmas cards, copy them. You can make your own ornaments this way and color them in with colored pencils, and that will be a really unique, colorful little ornament. Colored pencils are great like that. Prismacolor are pretty soft. If you even had Crayola, it probably will go fairly well in the wood. It's got a lot of texture to do that. Now I'm filling in the tree to make it pop out a little more. That's a lot of ink. That's a lot of ink. A lot of this is just busy work at this point. All these scritchy trees. You can't be precise with this. There's too much texture. And that helps make my tree even creepier. Can't be too precise. And I can start drawing with graphite on this thing first. It's probably not going to erase very well because there's so much texture in the wood. But if you go over it, it's a design feature. Yeah, design feature. All right, I'm just about done. If you do try this with colored pencils or just doodle on some wood with colored pencils, nice smooth stuff, sand it first. And can you show me a picture in the comments below? That would be sweet. Tell me how about your own experiments with drawing on wood and transferring to wood with this, whether you've done the gesso technique or the gel technique, or you're just drawing and sketching with graphite or tracing paper. Let me know how that works for you, or if there's any particular transfer process you'd like me to show you. Any other ornaments that we can stick on here. I can even do a time-lapse version of that as well. Alrighty. Last but not least, don't forget to sign your work, guys. That way all of your friends who love you far, far years in the future can remember you. All right. If you like what I do and want to see other cool and fascinating art techniques that just capture my fancy and other experiments for what's going on, please like and subscribe, or just subscribe, or just like, one of the two. Extra brownie points. I hope to do different kind of techniques and different art talks every Tuesday, and more art videos in between about all the cool adventures I do with native Michigan adventures and all sorts of landscape stuff. I love landscape Michigan. So yeah, that's my little my creepy little October ornament. I'll put some gold in there. Oh, look at this gold marker. Gold marker right here. Gonna go over those lines. Now that's nice and creepy. A little bit metallic accent with all those other textures in there. Moon, sun, doesn't matter. And then when I'm done, I'll just drill a hole in the top and put some burlap string in there. Thank you everybody for watching. Hope to see you next week.